Hello everyone. Introductions is back again with a new video, and today we are going to cover NCRT chapter 10, that is New Empires and Kingdoms. So, before moving ahead with this particular chapter, where we would be reading about Gupta dynasty, we will be recalling again what we have read in the previous chapter. Okay, the rulers who came before Gupta dynasty and how there were other rulers who were ruling in several parts of the continent. Okay, so there were the very first ruler was the Mauryan Empire. Okay, and we read about how Chandragupta Maurya established this Mauryan Empire, and then his son came into power, that is Bimbisar, and then later his son, that is Ashoka the Great, he came into power, and we talked everything about Ashoka the Great. Okay. However, Mauryan Empire it got collapsed about 2200 years ago, and then in its place and in several other places came Indo-Greeks, and these rulers they ruled about 100 years. Okay, and this was further followed by Central Asian people known as the Shakas. And these Shakas, they were setting up their kingdoms in the northwest region, north and western India. Okay, and their kingdom lasted for about 500 years. Okay, however, some of the areas of the Shakas they were being defeated by the Gupta king. Okay, however, in some areas where Shakas still ruled, they were then followed by the Kushanas. Okay, and again, there was one general of Mauryan Empire known as the Pushyamitra Shunga, and he again came up in the northern and central part of the India. Okay, and he set up his kingdom known as the Shungs. Okay, and these Shungs were followed by another dynasty known as the Kanvas and the rulers from the other families. Okay, and we also read in the previous chapter about a dynasty that was very powerful in Western India, and that dynasty was Satavahanas. Okay, and we also read one of the important ruler of them was Gautamiputra Sri Satkarni, and how they were known to be the lords of the Dakshin Path. Okay, because they were literally leading all the routes of the south. Okay, and the which was named for the entire southern region. Okay, so these shakas they were in the western part of the India, and also the Shatvahanas were there, so they battled with each other. Okay, several battles happened between them, and later on, however, a new ruling family came into existence called as the Vakatakas, and they became very very powerful in central and western India. Talking about the southern India, there was Cholas, Cheras, and Pandyas, and we know that they were the sea chiefs. And in Tamil language, there is a word that is used for them that is Movender. Okay, I hope you can recall from the previous chapter. And then gradually there were only two large kingdoms. One was that of Pallavas and the Chalukyas. There were several other kingdoms and kings as well. Alright, clear. And here is the Shaka coin, Satvahana coin, the Indo-Greek coin, Kushana coin. Okay, I hope it's clear. First was the Mauryan Empire, then came the Indo-Greeks, then there were the Shakas. Shakas got defeated in some areas by the Gupta kings. However, there were still some Shakas who were ruling, and then they were followed by the Kushanas. And in the northern and central India, again, a Shung dynasty was being established by a Maurya general, Pushyamitra Shung. Okay, in western part of the region, what is happening? There were Shakas, there were Sadvanas, and they were having several battles. And later on, Vakatakas came into existence, and they became very powerful in central and western India. And South India, Cholas, Chelas, and Pandyas. All right, clear? Moving ahead. So now let's start with the chapter. So Prashastis and what they tell us. So first of all, what Prashasti means? So Prashasti in Sanskrit word means in praise of, when you praise somebody. So here there were several court poets, okay, who used to praise their rulers, okay, and who used to write about their rulers. So there was a famous ruler. So a Gupta dynasty was being set up, and Gupta dynasty was being started by a famous ruler known as Samudragupta. Okay, and we come to know about Samudragupta from the Ashokan pillar at Allahabad. Okay, so there was a court poet known as Harishen. Okay, and he wrote several poems about his rule. Okay, moving ahead. So Samudragupta Prashasti. So in Samudragupta Prashasti, that is, the poet is praising how his king is so kind of a mighty warrior and how he has won so many victories in the battle and he is so learned. Okay, and he even described him as equal to the gods. Okay, so these Prashastis were composed in very long, long sentences. And in Harishen's Prashasti or Kavya, there we come across the description of four different kinds of rulers. One was the rulers of Aryavat, second, the rulers of Dakshinpat, third, the rulers that were there in the inner circle of the neighboring states, and fourth were the rulers of the outlying areas. So let's read all about them. So the rulers of Aryavat, there were nine rulers, and these all nine rulers got defeated. They were being uprooted by Samudragupta, and his kingdom was established over there. Okay, and then came the rulers of Dakshinpat. Okay, and in Dakshinpat there were 12 rulers, and these all 12 rulers they surrendered themselves to Samudragupta, and they also got defeated. And then, however, after defeating them, Samudragupta allowed them to rule again. Okay, then came the inner circle of the neighboring states like Assam, coastal Bengal, Nepal, and a number of Ganasanghas in the northwest. Okay, let's look at in the map. So this is the inner circle. This was the whole inner circle. Okay, this entire pink region is was the inner circle. I hope it's clear. So they brought tribute and they followed king's order and they attended his courts as well. And then there were rulers of the outlying areas, and they were perhaps considered to be the descendants of the Kushanas and Shakas. And there were rulers of Sri Lanka. They also submitted to him, and they even offered their daughters in marriage. Okay, so here is the outer state. This was the entire outer state. Okay, so in this particular map, you can see there are some important cities. These all black circled black dots. These were the important cities: Thaneshwar, Mathura, Kannauj, Prayag, Patliputra, Nalanda, Ujjain. Okay, Ajanta, Bharuch. We talked about in the previous videos about Bharuch, Vallabhi, Amravati, Aihole. We will be talking about Aihole, whose capital cities it was. Okay, Kanchipuram, Mahabalipuram, Arikamedu also we talked about this particular place. Okay. And then these red dots were the areas that were being conquered by the Guptas. Okay. This entire western region and also in some part of the southern region. How it was being conquered by the Guptas. Okay. I hope it's clear moving ahead. So let's talk about the genealogy. So in Samudragupta Prashasti, his even genealogy is mentioned, like his about his great grandfather, about his grandfather, father, and mother. And we come to know about his mother. His mother name was Kumara Devi, and she belonged to Lipchavi Gana. I hope you can recall that even the 24th Tirthankara of Jain community also belonged to this Lipchavi community and who was the father of Samudragupta. Chandragupta was his father, and he was the very first ruler of Gupta dynasty. Okay, and he was the very first ruler who adopted a grand title for himself, that is Maharaj Adhiraj, and this title was later on used by Samudragupta as well. Okay, and then in his genealogy, we also come to know about his son, that is Chandragupta II, and how he led an expedition to the western India and he overcame the last of the Shakas. And after defeating the Shakas, he assumed the title of Vikram Aditya for himself. And we come to know about this from Vikram Sambat. Okay, and also, it is believed that in his court there were very learned people were there, like Kalidas was there. Kalidas was a poet, and there was an astronomer known as Aryabhat. Okay, moving ahead. So let's talk about Harshvardhan and Harshcharita. Okay, So Harshvardhan, he ruled nearly 1400 years ago. And again, in his court also, there was a court poet known as Banavatta, and he wrote about him in Sanskrit. And do you know that Harshvardhan, although he was not the eldest son, but he succeeded the throne. The reason being that his father and his eldest brother, they died, okay, and his brother-in-law was leading and ruling Kannauj area. However, he got killed by the rulers of Bengal. Therefore, Harsha now took over the kingdom of Kannauj as well, and then he led an army against the ruler of Bengal. And Harsha became even successful in the east, and he conquered both Magad and Bengal region. And we know how important Magad region was and how it was a very important Mahajanpad. Okay. And he in fact even tried to cross the Narmada so that he can march into the Deccan. But however, he was being stopped by a ruler of Chalukya dynasty known as Pulakeshin. Now let's read about the southern rulers, that is the Pallavas, the Chalukyas, and the Pulakeshin. Prashasti. Okay, so in the southern India during this period, Pallavas and Chalukyas, they were very important rulers. Okay, and Pallavas had their entire kingdom spread over their capital. They had their own capital, that is Kanchipuram, and their kingdom was spread to the Kaveri Delta. And then there were Chalukyas who were centered around the Raichur Dewas, okay, that is between the river of Krishna and Tungabhadra. And we located Aihole in the map. So Aihole was the capital of the Chalukyas, okay, and it was a very very important trading center, and later on it also developed as a religious center because there were a number of temples that were being built over there. And the best known Chalukya ruler is considered to be Pulakeshin too. He is best known, okay. And again, there was a fourth poet uh, known as Ravi Kriti in his court, and he also composed several Prashasti for him. Okay, and again, he also talks about the genealogy, about his ancestors, and he even traced back through the four generations from father to son. Okay, and Ravi Kriti also talks about this expedition that was taken by Harshvardhan, okay, and however how he got defeated by Pulakeshin, okay. So do you know the meaning of the word Harsha means happy? And while writing his Prashasti, and he wrote that while being defeated, however, Harsha was no longer Harsha, okay. So obviously there are these huge kingdoms, so they had to be administered. So how were these kingdoms were being administered? So land revenue was the very important part, and it still played a very important role. And villages also remained the basic unit of administration. But later on, the new developments were also taken. For example, the king adopted several number of steps so that he can win more support from the powerful people in the society, or those who were powerful in on an economical basis. Okay, also because of their maybe political reach and military strength as well. Okay, and that is why there were many administrative posts that were kept hereditary, and that used to pass from one generation to another. And also there were many a times it used to happen that many offices were being held by just one person. And then there were men who had a say in local administrations as well. All right, moving ahead. So a new kind of army started to be maintained. Okay, so king started to maintain a well-organized army. They had their own elephants, chariots, cavalry, foot soldiers, and even military leaders were there. These military leaders were called as Samantas. Okay, and they provided the support, the troops to the king whenever he needed them. But they were not given the salary. Okay, they were not being paid the regular salary. Instead of salary, they were given the land grant. Okay, so they collected revenue from the land, and then they used to maintain the soldiers and the horses, and they provided the equipment for warfare. All right. So let's talk about assemblies in the southern kingdom. So from inscription of Pallavas, we come to know that there were several local assemblies, okay, which included the Sabha, and these Sabha was the assembly of Brahmin landowners, okay. And also this assembly, it functioned through the subcommittees. And this committee used to look after irrigation, agricultural operations, making roads, local temples, etc. And then again, there were uh, the landowners that who were not Brahmins, and they also had their village assembly. And the Nagaram was an organization of merchants. Moving ahead. So let's talk about ordinary people in the kingdom. So we know that Kalidas was there in the court, okay, and he was a court poet. So Kalidas was known for his plays, and he used to depict the life of the king's court. And 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 there was a very interesting feature about these plays, okay, where he showed that how the kings and the Brahmins used to speak Sanskrit, while there were men and women, some other men and women other than the king and Brahmin, they used to speak common language as that of Prakrit. And we also know that in the later Vedic period, how after the creation of the Varna structure, women and some other herders and uh, that was persons, they were kept in the Shudras, okay, and they were not allowed to read Vedas, and they used to speak the common language, and only Brahmins used to, and the people of the upper class used to speak the Sanskrit language, okay. And Kalidas has wrote a love story of a very famous play known as Abhijan Shakuntalam, and it was a love story between a king named Dushyant and a young woman named Shakuntala. Okay, moving ahead. So let's talk about somewhere else. Within this frame, what is the date frame? What is happening in the other parts of the world? So Arabia. Arabia was although a desert, but it was a hub of communication for centuries. Okay, there were Bedouins, there were pastoral tribes who depended on camels, hardy animals, and thus they survived the desert. Okay, and about 1400 years ago, Prophet Muhammad, he introduced a new religion, Islam in Arabia. And like Christianity, Islam was also talking about equality and unity of all before Allah, that is one supreme God. Okay, and here is one of the verse of the Quran where where it depicts and it showcases how equality is very much there, and it is a very egalitarian kind of a religion, and how men and women, they are not different. They are known for by their actions and not what kind of a gender you have. Okay, so within 100 years of Islam, it is spread to various regions like North Africa, Spain, Iran, and India. And there were Arab sailors who used to trade with India earlier as well. And now they came up with their religion, okay. And there were Arab soldiers who conquered Sindh, which is in present day in Pakistan. And they conquered Sindh about 1300 years ago. So this is one of the important dates from the chapters. So Gupta dynasty began around 1700 years ago, and the rule of Harshvardhan started about 1400 years ago. So that's it. Thank you so much. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, share it, and please do not forget to subscribe the channel. Thank you.